Hey guys, so today we've got another great video for you. We're installing aux beam ditch lights on our 4Runner. Super excited to bring you these. We have ordered these from Amazon. They got pretty good reviews. It's a 6 LED array of what are supposed to be quite bright LEDs. It's got very good weatherproofing here, big O-ring, good thick wire. It's metal. So I'm super excited for these. I think they're going to hold up well. I can't wait to see how bright they are. We also got, to install them, these brackets from Rayco Manufacturing in California. They will bolt up under the hood and give us a place to mount our lights. So we'll get those put out, show you how to do that. And we ordered this from ch4x4.com. It is a switch that will fit right in one of the blanks from our 4Runner. That is very similar to the one that we use for the light bar in the grill. It also comes with a little wiring harness, and on the back here they show you exactly how to wire it up. So I'm super excited for that. Hopefully you can see the wiring harness there, right? They look like they're going to be good lights. I can't wait to try them out. Let's get the 4Runner in the garage here and get going. So we're in the garage. Got the hood up, got our hood light on here, nice and bright, we can see everything. So last time when I ran the grill light bar, there wasn't a video for it. It was before I started doing videos, but I knew I was going to run other lights and accessories on here. So one of the things that I did was I got this bracket right here, which I don't know if you can see. Let me get you in here so you can see. So that's this bracket right here, which is what's holding my relays. Below that, you can see this is also a bracket from Rayco Manufacturing that just has 3 tines on it that you can use the back of the relay to slide right down on there, and it's a good way to hold your relays in place for your wiring. So I had done this wiring previously, knowing that I was going to add more lights. So there's fuses, goes to the battery, and then I ran it through the firewall right there. So what I'm going to do is, I forgot last time to cover that in black silicone RTV, so you really need to do that. That is going to keep water from getting inside the vehicle. I'm not sure what happened there, but I will be doing that this time, cleaning that and covering the whole thing in RTV. That's why Toyota, as you can see down here with the hood latch and the main wiring, there's always rubber plugs covering those holes. That hole was no different. I took the rubber plug out to fit the wiring through, but it now needs to get sealed up. So anyway, the wiring is already mostly installed here, but just to give you a quick recap, all I did was, it's a wiring kit that comes with a switch. We won't be using the switch because we have the one that fits the blank. Comes with the relays, the entire wiring harness, everything you need. I ran it to ground, underneath the fuse box here, ran it to power at the battery, and then ran it through the firewall. So to get it through the firewall, there's a sheet behind there, right, of carpet and plastic and a few other things. And so in order to get that stuff through there, the easiest thing that I have found in doing that on any vehicle is to take a really long zip tie, right, and let me grab it. Just like this, okay? We've got this really long, I mean, that's got to be 2.5 feet maybe, zip tie, right? But it's skinny. It's the little ones, you know, not the ones that people get arrested with, right? You want it little so that it's easy to fish around. And the benefit is you've got that nub at the top, right, where the zip tie would go through. So what you can do is, if you take the wiring and you lay the wiring across the zip tie and wrap some electrical tape around it, the electrical tape won't go past the nub of the zip tie, so everything stays together. And then this is stiffer and easier to fish through than the wiring. So you just fish through this long zip tie and just keep feeding it in there. Then you go inside underneath and you look for where there's a zip tie poking out. You grab and you pull, and it'll take all the wires right with it. So these are cheap and a really good way to get wires inside the vehicle. So first thing we're going to do now, we're going to get the brackets installed out here so we can get the lights mounted up. Once we have the lights mounted up, then we'll know how far we need to run the wires. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is take our brackets and figure out which one goes on which side. So we come up from under the hood, and these are the bolts, right, for the hood, and it bolts right to it. So we've got the right side. Now, the way to make sure of that is, so we want this to go right to those bolts, right there. Hopefully you can see that, those two bolts. This bracket goes right on those bolts. And when it does that, you see here, the bracket is out and to the left. This meaning this slot where we will mount the lights is closer to the edge of the vehicle, right? We don't want it going into the hood. That's not helpful. So we want it out here, out towards the edge of the vehicle. So this is the correct bracket for this side. All right, so hopefully you can see these bolts here. We've got our bracket that will mount like this to those bolts. Do not take both bolts out at once. The hood will slide. Getting the hood realigned is a huge pain in the neck, so do not do that. We'll take the top one off first, put the bracket on, make it snug so that the hood won't slide on us, and then we'll take the bottom one out and we'll just rotate the bracket into place, put the bottom one back in, okay? And that should minimize the potential for the hood to move. So we've got a 12mm socket on a socket wrench, and let's get started. Okay, so we've got that bolt out, right? We're going to take the bracket and put it here, and we want it to be close to this lower bolt, but not right on it, right? We need enough room to put our socket wrench there. So we'll take this bolt, we'll start to run it in here. Nice and easy like. Okay, that's just hand tight, right? So I want to make sure, again, I'm leaving enough space down here for me to get my socket onto this bolt. So we want to leave a little bit of room, not a lot of room though, but a little bit of room, and then we'll tighten this one down tight enough that we can still move the bracket with some force, but the hood won't move, right? So relatively snug. That's probably good. I think I can rotate that bracket. So now we're going to slowly take this bottom one out, and I hold my hand back here between the bracket and the hood so that I can feel if there's any movement. So when holding my hand there and starting to loosen this, if I feel that the hood shifts a little bit, then we can make some minor adjustments when we reinstall it. So before you go slamming the hood closed and it bites the fender and takes a chunk of paint out, those types of things, it's better to be really careful. So I hold back here just so I can feel for movement, and we'll loosen up this second bolt. So far I haven't felt any movement. That's really good. That means we tighten that top one just right. Okay, so we get this bottom bolt out of here carefully. Okay, we're going to swing this bracket into place, which is effectively loosening the upper bolt. So be very careful. Feeling for movement. Okay, I didn't feel any movement. So let's get this little bolt back in there and we'll snug everybody up. Now, don't strip the threads, right, but make sure it's good and tight. Last thing you want is it loosen up, the hood shifts, any of those kind of things, especially if you're like the rest of us and you do a little bit of off-roading. That's probably why you're putting these on. You know, the chassis and the body parts get a lot of torque and twist when you're doing those types of activities. So we don't want it to get to the point where something goes wrong and we can't get the hood open to see what's going on. So keep them snug so that things don't get out of alignment. So there we go. That's one bracket done. We'll zip the other side on in the same fashion, and we'll get right back to you. Okay, so the brackets are on, right? Here they are. I very gently closed the hood. I didn't latch it all the way down, but what I'm looking for is these lines, right, where the corners of the hood meet the fender. And it's obviously going to get wider as you come down because the hood's not all the way closed. But before you slam it or push it all the way closed, you want to just check these lines. This side looks like we've got about, I don't know, 3/8 of an inch to 1/2 an inch, right? And then we'll just run over to the other side and make sure that it looks like we've got about the same gap, and that looks pretty much exactly the same to me. So we've got our brackets on. So I think the next thing we're going to do is we're going to put the lights on so that we can see where the wires are going to run to, and that'll give us an idea for how long to make the wires under the hood. So let's get to it. Okay, so we got the bracket mounted on there. That's great. These aux beam headlamps, or ditch lights, came with these brackets, which allow the light to rotate in different directions, as well as different directions or orientations on this bracket. I don't know if you can see in here. Take that bolt out. There are some notches in there. I don't know if that's will show up on the camera. Yeah, there you go. And then the head of this bolt sits between those notches, so we'll hold it in place for us and keep it from rotating. It's not perfect, but it will help. This is looks like stainless hardware. Okay, so we've got our bracket mounted up here. We've got our light. It came with, again, looks like stainless hardware. There's a bolt and a washer here. They are 10 millimeter. They will go, there are 2 per side, so a total of 4 bolts. In the bottom of this light, I don't know if you can see that, there's a spot here and a spot here. 2 bolts go on each side of this slide. So here we go, let's get it mounted up. You can hear the children of the neighborhood in the background. It's a beautiful day out, so everybody's out running around, wishing spring was really here. Okay, there we go. One light on. That's great. Okay, so I think I'm going to probably want to angle it a little bit like this, and probably down just a little bit, maybe something like there. So what I'll do now is I'll tighten that up, and we'll leave it just like this. And then as we drive around and we figure out what really works, we'll adjust it. So for right now, I'm going to pick right here. Okay, here we go. So we got a little bit of an angle downward. We'll snug it up. I'm gonna pick not quite all the way to the edge here. I don't know if you can see from under here. Right, if I come all the way to the edge, then the bracket right here of the light overhangs the bracket that would be supporting it. So the farthest I'm gonna go is, in here somewhere where the bottom bracket of the light is fully supported by the bracket for the light to sit on. So probably somewhere in there. I'll turn it so that it's facing out, obviously the way it's supposed to, and we'll snug it up. Okay, there we go. So that, looking at it right now, may not be pointing forward as far as I would probably like, so that I can see sort of what's in front of me in the ditch. This is looking a little bit probably too far to the left as I'm sitting in the driver's seat looking at it. So we'll play with it. We'll see if it does what I need it to do, and if not, then obviously I'll just make some adjustments, maybe pull it in a little bit. So there we go. I'm going to put the other light on, and then we'll come back and we'll start talking about wiring. Okay. So you can see in here this gray tube right back here that runs, it actually goes all the way across the bulkhead. It's full of wires. So my plan is, this is the wiring off of the relay for the lights. So my plan is to button that up by zip tying it right to this tube of wires, and it runs all the way across there, all the way across to the other light. So what I'm first going to do is try to get it up around this. It's just an extra place for it to hold it. There's some wiring that runs up there, probably to the wiper motor or something like that. So we'll feed it through there and we'll start moving around. Okay, now just feed the rest of it through. Okay, so now if we look up here, these are the wires from the light that's mounted up above. But if we look in here, coming down, this is the bracket, right, that we just installed recently. So on that bracket, there are places like right here, you might not be able to see that, where you can zip tie the cabling to it. So they give us a nice option for managing this part of the wiring, but the problem is the wire is awful short, right, compared to where it needs to get to. So down in this tray, right, we could drill a hole in it and pass it through or something like that, but it's still going to be kind of short. And I want to make sure that the connection that I have leaves enough room between where it's connected and the hood, so that when the hood goes up and down, we have almost what would be known as a service loop that gives the wire enough room to move without pulling on any of the components, either the connections on this end or the light on the other end. So I think what I'm going to do is, and you may not be able to see, but down in here there's a piece of plastic here that can move, and there's a hole there. So I'm going to feed the wire from the relay up through here in just a loop, right, which I'll zip tie, and then connect this to the loop. It'll wind up being a parallel connection, and that's fine, but connect this to the loop, both the positive and the negative, and then we'll run the rest of it all the way over there, and we'll hook the end up to the other light. So first I'll run the wire, and I'll feed the loop up through here, and then we'll show you how we're going to connect it. Okay, so we've got our loop up through here. This is the wiring that came from the light. This is the wiring from the relay, right? So we've got everything we need there. So what I'm going to do is I'll take a razor blade and very carefully I'm going to cut away some of the plastic sheathing here that's covering the wires so that we can access them and attach these wires to it. After that, we'll pull the excess of this loop back down through and we'll zip tie everything up, but we'll show you the connections in just a second. So what I'm doing is I'm feeling for where the wires are, because you don't want to slice into the wires, right? We don't want to put a nick in there because they will corrode. We only want to cut this plastic shielding. So we're feeling for a place, and I'm trying to capture this on camera for you, we're pinching this wire to feel for a place where we could cut into it and not cut the wires, right? So right now that seems to be this outer edge. So let's see if we can get something started here. There we go. So we got a slice there. Now, if we open that slice up, we want to make sure that we didn't cause any damage to these internal wires. See that? They're clean. No nicks, no anything there. So that's good. That's perfect. So we don't need to cut all of it all off. We just need enough to expose those wires. So just that little bit that I did there is plenty. We can just pull it, right? And this will expose our wires, and then that way, once we make these connections, we can just pull this sheathing back over, wrap it all up in electrical tape, and away we go. So, let me grab some connectors, and I'll show you what we're going to use. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do here is they strip these ends for us. I'm going to go ahead and just take those off so that it's clean at the end here, like that, and like that. Because what I like to use are these sort of they're not real vampire clamps. Vampire clamps are a little bit different. But basically what you can do, right, is it unfolds. I've filled it with dielectric grease. That's very important. You want to make sure you fill as much of it as you can with dielectric grease. That's going to keep the water out, keep the connection from corroding and things like that. There's one side that's a pass-through. That's that side, and that will go on our wiring harness. And the other side is blocked on one end and has a hole on the other end. So we will insert the wire from our light into that side, then run the other wire, either power or ground, through here. And then when we squeeze this guillotine gate with some pliers, it will squish through the insulation to get to the actual copper wires and make the connection. So we'll put those on now for both power and ground on this side. Then we'll wrap this all up in electrical tape and things and button it up pretty. Then we'll come back and zip tie this to the frame, to the bracket that we put on, and then we'll head over to the other side and finish that up. So, I don't know if you can see that, but the grease is oozing out all around the wire. That's good. You want that. That means that everything is good and covered in this grease, and that's going to prevent the water from finding its way in, right? Which is exactly what we need to do. Keep that water out. Now, I'm holding the wire in there. What I'll do is I'll grab this guillotine with my pliers, but before I squeeze, I'm going to use that to push with my other hand, push the wire in there as far as I can to make sure it hits that back wall, and squeeze it down. Okay, all the way, making sure it's pierced both wires. Your pliers are going to get a little gooey. Everything's going to get a little gooey, but that's good. You want the grease everywhere. Then we just close this latch until it clicks. Ta-da! We're all good to go. Okay, so everything is nice and coated in grease, protected from the elements. So we can go ahead and do the same thing. That was the power side. Now we'll do the ground side. Give a slight tug on those connections just to make sure everything's in there good and tight. Close that lid until it latches. Good, golden, everything's great. So I'm going to wipe my hands off real quick. We'll come back with some electrical tape and we'll patch it all up. Okay, so we're all done there. I've got some electrical tape. Mine just happens to be green because of Christmas. So I'll wrap this all up, all around. It's going to be a little difficult right now because everything's coated in grease, but just, use your hands. Try to keep the tape as tight as you can, so that, again, we're trying to prevent water from finding a way in, right? The grease is a good start, but ultimately the tape is going to help too, especially with the surface tension of water, right? Then what we can do is, as long as we get things tight and close enough, then it's hard for water to find its way in. So again, keeping the tape tight, as tight as possible, even though it's going to have trouble sticking. Once you get enough tape around there so that the grease isn't on it anymore, then it'll start to stick to itself, and that's when we can really start to make a good seal. So don't give up on it just because it gets a little slippery. There we go. Something like that. Okay? Look at that, huh? All sealed up nice. No water going in there. Okay? So what I'll do is I'll feed some of this back down through. Feed some of this back down through. Right? Like that. Okay? There we go. Bingo. Now we can zip tie this wire up to the bracket that it came with. We've got plenty of extra here. See this extra little loop right there, so that as the hood opens and closes, right, there's plenty of extra wire there. So let's get some zip ties. Okay, so on this side we've got the benefit here because it's the end of the circuit. So we can just use a butt connector with what I like to use are ones that have heat shrink tubing as part of them as well, again to keep the water out, right? So I'm going to leave these stripped as they came from the factory from aux beam because we will use those. Then what we're going to do is we're going to take our wiring harness here, find a good place to run it. We'll cut it to an appropriate length. We can always zip tie up any that's excess, so always cut it long. You can always cut more off. But for now I'm going to make a cut way out here somewhere. Then we'll run it how we want and we can trim it down. So here we go. I think what I'm going to do is very similar to the other side. There's some space up underneath here where I can actually run the wires right up along here just like that. So here they are, and here's the wires from the light, and what I'll do is I'll make the connection and then I'll pull this wiring back down, and we can always zip tie extra here to this tubing, right? And we'll find a way to make that look pretty good. So what I might do is cut this back even a little bit farther now that I know how much excess I have here from the light. So let me do that now. Now I'm going to cut this jacket to start to expose the wires that are inside. There they are, right? Because those are what we need to get to. There we go. Just like that. That's plenty. So I'll cut the rest of this excess jacketing off here. Okay, like that. Now we can strip these wires down to just like this, probably a 1/4 of an inch, 3/8 of an inch, something like that. I've got this handy tool that strips them for you. It's got a little marking gauge here, so we can throw that in. Yeah, maybe we'll do 3/8, something like that, maybe 1/2 inch, and then all I do is squeeze and it strips it for me, right? So it'll automatically adjust to any wire size. Obviously, if you don't have this type of tool, just use your wire strippers to find the gauge, the appropriate gauge, and then strip them. So there you go. This is a handy little tool. I got this from Matco when I was working as an auto mechanic. So these are what I mean by butt connectors for those of you who haven't seen them before. Some of you probably, I'm sure, have. But the wire goes in one end and the wire comes in the other end, and it forms a butt joint, much like woodworking, but you connect this here, connect that there, crimp it together, and they're connected. Now again, just like the other side, what we want to do is, this is Permatex dielectric grease. We want to fill this thing up with dielectric grease until it's coming out both ends. And what that's going to do again is help keep the water out. Now we are going to heat shrink these, so there's that benefit as well, but just for extra protection we're going to go ahead and fill both of these all the way up with dielectric grease. Okay, now I cut these, I stripped these rather, probably a little bit long. They really only needed to probably be 1/4 of an inch, so I'm going to take a little bit off here. There we go. And the same from the light. I'm going to take this probably down to about 1/2 of its size. Okay, we'll grab the crimpers and get to it. So this is what I use for a crimping tool. I've had these for a long time. They are wire cutters, but in here you'll see there's a V groove down here and a big block up there. So when I put the butt connector in there and I squeeze, it will crimp them together. Okay, so here we go. And then after you crimp it, you want to just give it a gentle tug. Don't pull too hard. Just a gentle tug here to make sure that you've got a good solid connection, which we do. So we'll put the other side in. Okay, crimp that. Okay, excellent. And I'll do the positives. Good. Okay, so I'll get the lighter and we'll shrink those up. Okay, so we're going to carefully apply a little heat here. Across these, and they will shrink. See that grease starting to ooze out at the end? That's good. That means we shrunk it up. It's all shrunk to the wire, and that grease is not going anywhere. So we'll heat both sides just to make sure we got everything good and smushed up. Okay, and again, we're not going to just leave it like this, right? We're going to add some electrical tape around these when we're done. Ooh, that's hot. Keep your hand out of the way. Okay. We'll let that cool for a quick second. We'll wrap it up in electrical tape. We'll feed it back down, zip tie it to the light, and away we go. So we've got this side all complete. We've fed the wiring through here. We put the connections on. We zip tied it up to the bracket, so we are all set. So as a quick recap here, we've got all the wiring done under the hood. We're hooked up to the battery. I had done that previously. The relay is on the relay mounts, also done previously. We ran the wires all across the back to both lights. We made the connections. Over here we had a parallel vampire type connection. Over here we used butt connectors. So that stuff is all done. Now we can go inside and finish it out. We need to take this panel off right here, so we can get to these blanks, and if we can get to those blanks, this is the one for our bumper light, and then we'll put another one in here for our ditch lights. So to get this off, we have to take this floor piece off, that piece off, and then there's a couple of bolts that will help us take this off. So to get started, we just yank that piece off. Just like that. Okay. So now in here, this piece is held on by a nut in the back. Okay, so now that you can see, this is that side panel, and that back there is a nut near the foot pedal, which is kind of difficult to get to, but can be undone by hand. Ta-da! Okay, now we should be able to just pull this piece off, just like that. So now that we've got that pulled off there's a bolt here. Needs to come undone. That's a 10 millimeter, I believe. And then over here, under this flap that you can get off with a flathead screwdriver or a pick or something like that, there's another bolt. So let's do that now. Okay, so I use this plastic tool that's used for a lot of things, putting lights in interiors, that type of thing, but it doesn't scratch. So that's why I like to use this type of tool. Doesn't always work. Sometimes you wind up needing to get a metal screwdriver or something like that, which it looks like in this case maybe we do need to do. There we go. Okay, so there we go. Now we'll just take these bolts out. Okay, now this whole panel should come off. Just give it a tug, just kind of pull. There I just released the hood. That's okay, that happens. Nothing to worry about there. Okay, so you could get the hood latch release thing off, but you really don't need to. This is really all we needed to do, just this much, right? So that we can get access to those blanks. You could take this all the way out if you really felt inclined to, but there's really no need or reason. So from here, we'll take some blanks out, put the switch in, wire it up, and away we go. Okay, so just to make this easier, I'm going to wire up as much as I can out here, and then we'll put it back behind the panel and get everything hooked up. So here we go. Okay, so all of the harness end is wired up. Let's get the switch end and do the same thing. So I'm just following the instructions from the back of the switch for how to wire this up, as well as the instructions that came with the wiring harness. So just make sure you read all the instructions and make sure you hook the right things up to the right pieces. So for this particular application, my green is going to go here with the white. Okay, my black is going to go with black. Okay, and then there are two, unfortunately, of this sort of, one is like red with tan and one is red with orange. Maybe if you're good enough at your colors to decipher those differences. But for me, it's based on the pinout. So next to the green here, this red and orange wire is going to be the one that goes to the blue wire here, and this other one will go to the dash lights. So that the switch lights up when you turn your lights on. Okay, so this other one, now I've already found, because I put another switch in there, where my dash lights come from. I used a power probe just to poke around until I found one that lights up when the dash lights come on. For yourselves, you could use a pinout diagram maybe, or a wiring diagram if you happen to have one. I don't know if I can show you exactly where I found it, but let's try. So for me, I'm using in there's this wiring here that goes to another switch, which is actually your wiper switch for the heated wipers on the front. So I just poked in there on those wires, and it turned out to be the green one that is activated when the headlights come on so that you can see the switch. So for me, I just attached it directly to that. For this one, I'll just attach it directly to the one from the previous switch, and then we'll put the switch blank in. Okay, so we've got all the wiring done. We've got him in here. It's not in the blank yet, obviously, but let's just test it out. Hey, it works. Okay, so next step is to get it put into one of these blanks. So when I squeeze the top and the bottom tab here, it should come out. Sometimes you need something a little stronger than just your fingers, apparently. There we go. The blank is out. So we'll take our switch here and undo him from the wiring harness. Make sure we've got it oriented in the right direction. Slide it in till it clicks. There we go. And we plug it back in. Just like that. So that the plug can't come undone. Everybody's clipped, everybody's happy. Okay. So now we'll just take all the wiring and kind of neatly try to put it back in here. There's a nice conveniently located piece of frame right here that you can tuck this all behind. Okay, there we go. Nice. And then we should be able to just put this all back in place. Let's see. It doesn't want to go on the sides here. There we go. Okay. There we go. We can put all our bolts back in and we're done. Okay, that's it. They went on pretty easy. Not too bad. Took a little while, but they're on there. They look good. They work. They're pretty bright. I'm excited to get out there in the woods and try to use them and see what we find. It's really neat. I'm not sure about the angles yet, like I said earlier, but we'll play with it until we get what we like. But they're on there, and now we get to have some fun. So don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel if you like these videos or you gain anything out of them. We enjoy putting them together, and I enjoy doing this stuff on the cars, so if you're getting any benefit to it, that's a plus. So don't forget to like and subscribe, leave some comments if you've got any questions or there's anything else you'd like to see or get more info on. But that's it. I had a great time. Just because we all love lights, one last shot with all the lights on. Oh yeah.